couples.
They did family vacations. They would go camping. We'd go to Six Flags or we'd go out to eat.
But a devastating crime would tear the four friends apart.
To see all the blood and the evidence left behind, you knew right then there had been a fight, a pretty good scuffle that went on.
The resulting investigation would send the congregation reeling.
Most of them had absolutely no idea there was an affair going on.
And the search for answers would leave police wondering, just how many commandments did one person violate? Early morning, July 5th, 2004. It was still dark when a delivery driver pulled into the parking lot at the Frito-Lay distribution center in Rome, Georgia.
He's fixing to come load his Frito-Lay truck to go on his route.
While he's in the parking lot, I think he's just getting some stuff together before he gets out of the car. He sees a man step out of the office.
Someone at the office that early in the morning wasn't unusual. But the fact that the driver didn't recognize the man was.
It was not really a facility that was open to the public. It was just where the drivers came and loaded and unloaded product.
Even more suspicious, the stranger silhouetted in the doorway appeared nervous.
That man stops, looks around, stands there for just a few seconds.
Whether he'd noticed the delivery man sitting in his parked car or not, the stranger made a hasty exit.
The witness watches the guy walk over to this burgundy minivan, and he opens the car door, and when he does, the light comes on inside the van, and then he watches the guy take his shirt off and pull it over his head.
Once he'd stripped off his shirt, the stranger started the minivan and drove away, leaving the witness to wonder what was going on inside the Frito-Lay office.
He went and checked the office and discovered the victim in this case.
It was the distribution center's district manager, Thad Reynolds, slumped on the floor in a pool of blood.
His supervisor has been attacked, and he calls 911.
Police and EMTs were on the scene within minutes, but it was no use. Thad Reynolds was already dead.
There were 19 different stab wounds.
To see all the blood and the evidence left behind, you knew right then that there had been a fight, a pretty good scuffle that went on.
Thad's death sent shockwaves through the close-knit Southern community, particularly his church, Hollywood Baptist.
This church in particular was a very larger church in a smaller community. A lot of people here, everybody knows everybody.
And everybody at Hollywood Baptist knew Thad Reynolds and his wife, Michelle.
Thad and Michelle, just looking at them, they were the perfect couple.
She was the beautiful blonde mother of four.
She was just a very likable, very, very pretty person.
He was a dedicated father and a devout Christian.
He loved the Lord and could, always make your day better.
People that were not doing well or they needed guidance, he would be there.
We lost one of the godliest men you could ever want to meet.
Thad's murder was bad enough, but the parishioners at Hollywood Baptist would receive another blow when they discovered the sin that led to it. As small-town Georgia teenagers in the 1980s, Michelle Sullins and Thad Reynolds were the quintessential high school sweethearts.
Michelle was very popular in high school. She was the homecoming queen.
He was popular, played football, was into sports.
They married in 1987, just after graduation.
He went to work for Curtis Meat. He drove a truck.
Michelle got a job working as an administrative assistant, but gave it up when she gave birth to a daughter in 1992.
When she started having children, they had made the decision that she would be a stay-at-home mom.
But just as Thad and Michelle's small-town romance appeared on the fast track to a happy ending, things suddenly derailed. In 1995, after almost 7 years of marriage, Michelle told Thad she wanted a divorce.
She wasn't happy just being a mom and a wife.
She made the comment to this pastor from the church, "You place your wife on a pedestal, but Thad never put me on a pedestal."
Thad agreed to the divorce, but he immediately regretted it, especially for the effect it might have on his daughter.
He was never more miserable in his life. He didn't believe in divorce. He did not believe in broken homes.
Determined to get Michelle back, Thad Reynolds turned to the church he'd attended since childhood, Hollywood Baptist.
It was a very close-knit congregation, a community of people that took their faith and religion very seriously.
Thad asked the members of the church to pray for him and Michelle Reynolds to get back together.
He had several people praying that they get back together because he just wanted her back so bad.
Whether it was the prayers or Thad's persistent courtship, Michelle eventually had a change of heart. 2 years after they had divorced, the couple remarried in 1997.
Thad and Michelle had a wedding in the church on the Sunday morning. That was our church ceremony.
And this time it looked like the marriage would last. The couple built a new home and quickly filled it.
Everything was going good. I mean, they built the new house next to my parents and had 3 more children.
A beautiful home and a growing family. Thad and Michelle's divorce appeared to be well behind them.
They just seemed to be in love. They just seemed to be the absolute perfect family whenever you would see them.
They called them Barbie and Ken because that's the way their life seemed to be going.
Thad's career thrived too. After hiring on at Frito-Lay, he worked his way up to district manager.
He started out driving the beat-up Frito-Lay pickup truck, the oldest one they had, and just moved up.
I didn't know of them wanting for anything. They had a fairly nice lifestyle.
Thad and Michelle entered their 30s as pillars of their small-town community, comfortably middle class, raising a family and active in their church.
Thad and Michelle worked with the group New Generation, which was kids, and they did songs and acted out skits and went to several different places putting on the shows.
Thad also sang in the choir and served as a deacon.
He also did marriage counseling.
He'd be, there if you needed him. If you had a problem, you could always go to him.
Between the children's ministry, deacon duties, marriage counseling, and couples retreats, the church dominated Thad and Michelle's free time.
There were a number of couples in the church that would do things every weekend together. They were close friends.
The Reynolds worked closely with the church's youth minister, Scott Harper. Like the Reynolds, Scott and his wife Paige had young daughters, and the two families soon became inseparable.
Anytime you seen one, it wasn't far behind. Here comes the other family. It was always them two couples.
Thad quickly became best friends with Scott, who also worked as an IT specialist at a local hospital. And as two stay-at-home moms with busy husbands, Michelle Reynolds and Paige Harper became close too.
Michelle and I became best friends. She was like a sister to me. Our birthdays were just days apart, so many years for our birthday, we all four celebrated together. We'd go to Six Flags or we'd go out to eat.
Good friends, a beautiful family, and a seemingly strong marriage. Thad and Michelle appeared truly blessed. And Thad wanted to show his gratitude by giving back. One Sunday in the spring of 2004, he stood up in front of the congregation of Hollywood Baptist and made an announcement. He was joining the ministry.
He felt like that God was calling him to be a minister.
But did Michelle want to be a minister's wife? There were signs that she might want a little time away from Thad. In June of 2004, she signed up to help the Harpers chaperone a church youth retreat. At the last minute, she called Paige with a change of plan.
Michelle called me to tell me that she was getting her own room. She was not going to chaperone with me because she just needed her time.
She wasn't going to be in a room with a whole bunch of kids, and she was the only person who had a room by herself.
And Michelle continued to keep to herself, even when she was around her best friend.
Michelle was very distant from me. She would not acknowledge me if I spoke to her, would not look me in the eye. Was just very different.
Michelle's behavior was so different, in fact, that Paige became concerned.
I said, Michelle, is there something? wrong? Have I done something to offend you? And she just looked me in the eye and she said, no, I just want to be around people who are on fire for God.
Paige was stung by the rebuke.
It was very odd because we all worship together every Sunday. I was just as active in the church as they all were, and felt closer to God than I had ever felt.
As puzzling as Michelle's remark was, it was soon clear who she thought was on fire for God. As her husband Thad prepared for the ministry, Michelle became closer than ever with Hollywood Baptist current associate pastor, Scott Harper.
She would continually ask him for assistance about how to do different things with the kids at their church. She started asking him more and more and more for his assistance. And they started exchanging emails, talking constantly.
Saturday, July 3rd, 2004 was the start of a big holiday weekend in Rome, Georgia.
The county puts on a display of fireworks every year down by the river.
Predictably, the Reynolds and Harper families met up for the fireworks. On Sunday, July 4th, they met again at church.
We all decided we would meet at Ridge Ferry Park that afternoon and just kind of hang out and, have snacks and play volleyball and stuff like that and just enjoy the evening together.
Michelle certainly appeared to enjoy herself.
I noticed her being kind of flirtatious with other men, asking somebody to help her, show her how to throw a football and stuff like that.
She was a little too flirty, wanting other men to pay attention to her.
But after a little playful flirting at the picnic, Michelle and her husband loaded up their 4 children and they all headed home.
They probably had a good evening at home together. I know that he said goodnight to the children and did the normal things that a father would do.
The next morning, Thad was up well before sunrise. Michelle and the kids were still asleep when he left for work.
He always joked with me about the reason he worked so hard is so they wouldn't have to. And, he started early in the morning so he could get home in the evenings and spend time with them.
Thad had only been at the office at Frito-Lay a few minutes that morning when a man in a burgundy minivan pulled into the parking lot.
He parks right in front by the front door of the office. He gets out of the car, goes inside.
Minutes later, the man would get back in his minivan and drive away. And Thad Reynolds would be dead. Coming up, did Thad and Michelle's picture-perfect marriage mask a sinful secret?
They were flirting, lover chit-chat, if you will.
July 5th, 2004. It was a slow post-holiday Monday for most of Rome, Georgia. But the Floyd County Police were busy. They had just received a call from the Frito-Lay distribution center on the edge of town. A delivery driver who worked at the center had just found his supervisor, 36-year-old Thad Reynolds, dead in the distribution center's office.
It was clear that he had been in the office and working. Based on the disarray of the office, it was clear that there had been a struggle.
There was a bloody fight, maybe starting outside the office and going on into the office.
In the course of the struggle, Thad Reynolds had been repeatedly stabbed.
There are different wounds all over his body, including defensive wounds.
But who would launch a deadly attack on the well-known church deacon?
They had a witness who saw a man drive away in a minivan.
The witness, the same Frito-Lay driver who had found Thad's body, told police he didn't get a clear look at the man's face or the minivan's license plate. But clues at the scene appeared to both confirm that he had seen the killer and that Thad had managed to wound his attacker.
There was a large